I think the best way to answer that is with no. It's not a straightforward single subject in the national curriculum. Media artifacts and thinking about media in education exist in a diffuse way in our curriculum. They don't have their own specific set of subject orders. Our national curriculum, especially since September 2014, has been very organized around the traditional subjects and a quite traditional view of how a curriculum should operate in schools. And there have been some significant changes. Media and moving image texts used to be present in primary school literacy, but their reference to media has been largely removed from our education orders for schools. If you were looking for digital texts and media in education in the school curricula, you have to find it in some parts of curriculum subjects as they exist. So to give you an example, digital texts and the study of digital texts is now part of our curriculum for computing, which is a new set of curriculum orders which are compulsory in schools for all children aged from 5 upwards in all of the stages of education. And it's computing is compulsory throughout those for children aged 5 to 16. And there are still qualifications towards the end of school time which children can opt to do. So there's still a very strong recruitment to media studies in a subject area, non-compulsory subject area later in secondary schools. And there are still examinations in film and media studies at both ordinary GCSE level and advanced level study. The subject is also in the university sector, and there are varying kinds of media studies degrees, but in terms of formal schooling, there isn't a separate subject called media education or media literacy as a set of subject orders for our schools, no. But what you do find is that there are a range of materials and ideas for the teaching of media are promoted by excellent cultural organisations such as the British Film Institute, which has a thriving programme for schools and for teachers who are interested in the use of media materials. So they understand that it's possible to learn both about media and about a subject by teaching with media. And so the British Film Institute, and in particular the work of Mark Reed, education officer there, it does some outstanding work with teachers. There is also a new organisation, well, a couple of years old now, called Interfilm, which is funded for 4 years to promote the teaching of film, that's learning about film and learning how to make film, which does kind of have an overlap with media. We understand that as one form, but media is much wider than that, obviously. But they're beginning to make an impact, and they're developing materials for teachers and classrooms all the time. There is also the film space run by people who used to run film education. And there's just some excellent materials out there for learning about film and how to make film. So I wouldn't want to give the impression that nothing is happening. There are lots of exciting things happening, but they happen in pockets of good practice with media education, and it is not a compulsory subject. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. The thing that has happened is that there's been a shift in the study of the moving image towards thinking about film as an art form. So film is quite heavily promoted and understood as an art form. Once you start talking about television, you start to go into all sorts of areas about the industry and about global television and so forth. And that is less taught in schools, but it is very much a part of what people work with media studies later in the non-compulsory side of the curriculum. And I think that there's still a great deal of interest in television as well, although its use and its use in the home is changing, and the way that people watch TV is changing. I mean, there's lots of reports to suggest from our own communications agency, Ofcom, who regularly survey the uses of TV and other devices in homes, that the way people are watching television and participating with broadcasters is in a much more individualized and responsive way for people who are fortunate enough to own tablet devices or smartphones. There is this notion of the second screen where things are happening on one screen in a living room and might be happening on a TV. It could be related to what's going on there. It could be something entirely different. To give you an example, there's a popular television program every week where politics is debated, and as much activity happens online during that broadcast through Twitter and other screens as is happening on, it has two or three or many thousands of different lives in people's homes by audiences talking to one another about what's happening on the TV. So it's quite an interesting and new way that people are experiencing and consuming TV by talking about it as it's happening through another screen that they have. We think that media literacy, it's a complicated term, and it was kind of, in a way, it was the two terms do not sit comfortably together. I prefer to talk about media education, but I understand what media literacy means. We don't think it's unimportant, and I'm part of the Media Education Association, and we do lobby and campaign for there to be media education much more centrally in our curriculum. We look at other countries where things are going on which are quite exciting, and we think that our children and children in our schools have an entitlement really to experience teaching and learning about the medium and the media through which they're swimming every day. It doesn't make any sense to just be educating people about print literacy. And in any case, the traditional modes of print literacy have been shown time and again to be very well supported by also working with media and learning about media. And so we're very interested in being much more campaigning about media. If I can just draw a parallel, there used to be a curriculum for ICT as a subject, Information and Communications Technology, and it was it had lots and lots of critics, and some of the critics were saying that there was not enough teaching about computing, and they had a very, very powerful political lobby, including involving Google and other people who came to see our Prime Minister, passed it on to the Secretary of State, who was persuaded that the subject needed to change and just be about computing. So they managed by quite successfully lobbying government to get computing into the curriculum. And it's something that all of us are very happy, we welcome it as a change and as something to do, but we see that computing is only one side of the equation. And we don't like the idea that only computer science now has this status. We think that also media and media arts and media humanities, digital arts, digital humanities should also be in there as well to complete the picture, because it is not that computing alone doesn't guarantee employment or economic success. But if you think about the massive industry that computing is built around digital games and so forth, there are artists, designers, musicians, storytellers. So we generally would argue that the arts and the digital arts in particular should also be present in a compulsory way in our school curriculum. And that, of course, does mean media literacy and campaigning for media to be taught in schools as well. I've done quite a bit of research with colleagues all up and down the country in the uses of teaching media and animation, for example, alongside traditional learning of poetry, where we did a project with some children, quite young children in primary schools, showing the benefits of working with non-narrative poetry and with animation. Also been involved in filmmaking projects with young people in schools using tablet devices most recently. And we see a massive excitement and interest around that work, which involves engaging children in the whole of the curriculum, the print literacy curriculum and the media curriculum. So we welcome computing in there. We think it's a good thing, but we'd like to see media there with the same status as well from the earlier stages. David Buckingham, who used to work with us at the Institute of Education, compiled a review of this, a statistical review, for the Media Education Association. We're running a campaign to keep it as a subject and to keep it as an examination subject. And he's got a lot of statistics in there, entries for 2013 across both subjects. That's film and media studies, were almost 60,000 people studying them at GCSE, 45,000 at AS, and 29,000 at A2. These are significant numbers. It's a significant subject. I mean, unfortunately, the subject of media studies is sometimes derided and put down and regarded as the phrase in England is soft option, although it contains many kind of technicalities and a lot of thinking and thought about what is right in front of you, and it's absolutely not a soft option. And we would like to see its status enhanced and not derided in this way. And we hope that it will long continue to be an exam subject. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in the informal sector, which I'm particularly interested in researching. There is a role for learner voice in all of this, and we did some research on learner voice with young children, age 7 to 11, around media and technology, and some of their interest was in seeing some of what they do outside the school represented inside the school and inside the school curriculum. This is not the same as saying that we dismantle or change the apparatus around, throw out everything and bring in what people are doing outside into educational settings. But it is to recognize that children and young people have really quite interesting skills and dispositions towards their activities with new media, which could constructively be built on in the school setting. And likewise, the school has a role. It's like a semi-permeable membrane through which children pass. They come out of school and they do things, they go into school, they do other things. School can contribute a kind of criticality and a critical distance towards information, and has a huge role in promoting safety, for example. But we see that there are skills and dispositions towards learning which children and young people have by use of their media and their screens at home, which could significantly enhance wider educational understanding. So we think that their voice, in that sense, we think it should be heard. And I think that television is perhaps being watched differently and interacted with in a different way through online means and through other screens that people are there. But the broadcasters exert a huge influence over the media, and and children and young people are watching masses of TV still, even if they're watching it in a different way. And also, we shouldn't this is one of the key elements of media education as well that fascinates me, is the way that we make children the other all the time. So they're the people that need protecting, internet safety, and they're the people that need educating. But this is a fluid and hybrid and changing situation for everyone. So on the train in the morning, adults are experiencing media in different ways and different screens, just as children are, just as open to risk and opportunity as children and young people are. So I'd resist that kind of othering of them. But yeah, I think that children are still massively, hugely influenced by television, as are adults. They just watch it differently and in many, many different ways now.